Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our broadcast. And once again, we have John with us. John, wave at the crowd. Okay, and Deji just joined. Deji is going to be doing the presentation for today. Hello, Deji.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi Robert. Hi John. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
So, I'm going to go ahead and share your screen and then get started. I want to see how we can keep it to 30 minutes.
30
And while
minutes.
you're sharing your screen, yeah,
Okay.
I'll just do a quick intro.
Oh,
So,
okay.
hello
All
again,
right.
everyone. Welcome to this broadcast. So, for today, we're going to go through introductory Python for machine learning. Now, it's important to state that Python is not only meant for machine learning, it's used in all sorts of areas. You've got front end dev, you've got back end dev, and then you've got Python that also runs on microcontrollers. So for today, we're going to go through a few things. Deji will take us through a few things. And for anyone who's new to Python or to the world of machine learning, well, you need to know your Python before you get to your machine learning because you're going to see code. And the problem with machine learning code is that it tends to be written in a few lines. And sometimes you'll be wondering what all the hassle is about if you can train a model in 10 lines of Python code. But you need to understand what's going on specifically because there's a lot that can get nested into things like comprehensions, for example. So, Deji, are you ready for us?
Yes, I am. Sharing my screen a bit now.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi everyone. Once again, my name is Deji, and taking the introduction to Python. This is going to be like a beginner-like overview um, of Python, and doesn't require that much prerequisites, right? I have a notebook that I can use to play around with examples and some guide, it's a document that I would use as a guide through the lesson, right? Let's get started with that. Right. Python generally is a high level scripting language with object oriented features. Just to confirm, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Um, so um, Python programs can be run from a command line. So generally, to run a Python program, you need to have Python set up on your machine, and you can get that set up easily from the Python website. And we write Python in .py files, right? And once you create a file and you have the .py extension, you can easily run Python programs on it, right? Next up is variables and the data types, right? So Python supports a couple of data types, which is Boolean, integer, long, float, string, list, and object, right? So to try out some examples, right, we can have we can do this, right? Uh, so this is a sample Boolean. Um, this is declaring a variable and giving it a type of boolean, right? So
Deji,
boolean
please zoom in
okay.
on your screen.
Much
Yeah,
better.
that's better. Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Boolean types are either true or false, right? They are logical types used in Python, right? So you can we use it for conditionals mostly, right? So like if something, or if um, some equation is equal to true, right? Like doing some equality check, right? And then we have string. So writing a string is as simple as doing something like this, right? So this, and Python is dynamically typed, meaning you don't need to set the the type of the variable. You don't need to declare the type of the variable, right? So you just go ahead straight up and declare it, and it can infer it from the right hand side of the equation. Then we have integers, right? And have my integer, which is equal to, let's say, 2300, right? Yeah, this is an integer, and this is how you declare an integer in Python, right? So those are like the basic data types we have, and this is how you declare a variable, right? A variable can hold a boolean, a string, a list. A list is going to be something like this, and to have it as a list. So, right. So next up is scopes in Python, right? So Python scopes are usually local to their function or a class, right? So for example, right, you can have a function. Sorry, we are jumping into defining a function straight up, but we'll talk about it later um, down the line. But like if we have a function called hello, right? That we have a variable called a is equal to 1, right? So what by Python variables are local, it means that you can only access this local, you can only access a within the Python function, right? And you can't access it outside. So a quick example is that you can do print a here, right? And you can't do print a here because this is outside the function. And in Python, we don't use braces, or we use indentation. And this is how you define a function in Python, right? So next up is statements and expressions, right? Any If anyone has any questions, we can have it drop. Robert, is it good so far?
Yeah, we're fine. We can see their
Right.
comments. So if there are any
Oh,
questions, we will compile them.
we'll compile them. Oh, okay, great. So statements and expressions, right? We have basic statements in Python, which are like the print statements, which is just to output the content of a variable, usually as an output, like to the command line. And then we have an assignment variable, which assigns a value to a variable, basically, right? And then we have the input function, which allows the user accept inputs like externally into a Python program, right? And then we have imports, which we can use to import a module into a Python program, right? So um, this is how. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this would right. So assigning as this is the assignment statement, we can say a is equal to b is equal to 5, and this can be interpreted as a is equal to 5, and can be interpreted as a is equal to 5, and it can be interpreted as b is equal to, and this just says, this what this does is that a is equal to 5 and b is equal to 5, and we can do it in a single line like this in Python, right? So this equal to is used to assign a value to a variable in Python. And then we have post increments, which increments a variable by a certain value and returns it to the variable. So what this essentially is doing is saying b plus equal to 1 is the same thing as b is equal to b plus 1, right? So if the content of b is 27, for example, and then we do b plus equal to 1, the final output of B is going to be 28, right? Which is just 27 plus 1. And then yeah, this is like a single assignment statement where you are not assigning more you're not assigning a value to multiple variables in a single line, right? And then this is for importing in Python, right? You can import a Python module this way. OS is a module and math is a module. You can import it this way into Python. And this is another way of importing all the individual functions in a module, right? So a module can contain multiple functions, and you can either import the whole module as a whole or import the functions individually into your Python program, right? So next up is next up is operators, right? So we have different operators in Python, which are the arithmetic operators, which are plus, minus, multiplication, division, and modulus, right? This is how they are written. I'm not sure if this part of is clear. If we can see this clearly, can we see this clearly? Oh, okay, and I would assume we can. So for mathematics, for comparison operators, we have the equality operator, we have the not equal to operator, we have the less than and the greater than, and this is less than or equal to, and this is greater than or equal to. Hold on a minute. And so for logical operators, we have the and, or, and not, and we have this for exponential for doing exponents, right? So which you, if you want to do something like 2 raised to the power of 3, you use this operator, right? And so like we are going to use some examples of them, and let me do that now. So, and so for arithmetic operators, you can have something like so 2 plus 3, which you can assign to a variable, right? Like x, for example, and you can have something like y is equal to 5 minus 2. So then we can say z is equal to compare c equal to divided by 2 divided by 2. And then we can have modulus, for example, we can say r is equal to 5 over 2, right? So, can anyone hear me? Let me confirm if I've lost my internet connection. Yeah, John,
I can
Robert,
hear
are you
you.
there? Oh, okay,
Yes.
great. So we the these operators are quite, they are quite the basic operators. We can we know that x would be equal to 5, y will be equal to 3, z will be equal to 10. Oh, okay, yeah, so let me do it this way. Let me print out the answer. Z will be equal to 10, C would be equal to 4, and R will be equal to, when you do the modulo, you get a remainder. So it's division operators, and yeah, so we have this. Right. Yeah, so modulo, the rest are quite uh, easy to understand. But modulos, for example, what it does is gives you the remainder, right? So what this does is that, like when you divide 5, when you remove how many, when you remove enough twos from 5, right, you have a remainder, and that remainder is like the modulo. So another example would be something like 7 modulo 3. let's say r again is equal to 7 modulo 3, and then we expect that the answer from this will be equal to 1. Yeah, correct. So the next step is, these are the functions that are under the mathematics module. It's a bit it's not so much, but like I'll share this at the end of the session. We have the absolute function which just returns the absolute value. We have this is a mathematical function, and then yeah, a couple of them, right? So some of the important ones that we use day to day are things like the floor variable, floor function, which rounds up to the lowest. So which does a rounding down, right? Then we have another popular one is power. If you don't want to use the exponent operator, you can just use the power function, right? And then we have random, which you can use to generate a random number, sometimes within a range, right? And then you have the round function as well. So for strings, the next step is strings, and strings can be specified using a single quote or a double quote, unless it's defined by a raw string by placing an R in front of it, right? So for strings, um, we have single line strings and we have multi-line strings, right? So we can, a single line string can be defined this way. Single string. Then for a multi-line string, you can have it this way, right? Multi- string, right? And if you output both of them, like say print single line, have it this way, right? So a multi-line string lets you write across multiple lines, like the name suggests, and a single line string, we can have it this way. You can have in a single line, and you can write multiple line strings in a single line, but you need to like concatenate them, right? So we have some functions. So the mathematical functions that we have in Python can be used. The equivalent can be used in with string operations, right? So we have the concatenation operation, which you can do this way, which you can just say plus something else, and then like it concats both strings together, right? And so next up we have so we have a couple of functions on the string object, right? Which you can we have slicing on strings. I'm not sure how many minutes we have left because we have. I want to cover most of the like a high level
Yeah, just
overview.
keep going.
Oh,
Keep going,
okay,
Deji.
okay, great. And then for arrays, arrays or lists in Python are data types that data structures that can contain
No, what
multiple.
I meant, Deji, is you don't need to skip ahead. Like you can go back and say what you wanted to say and
Oh,
explain
okay.
on the
Oh,
string side. Yeah, don't
okay.
feel
So
pressured for time.
for time. Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah. So we have a couple of functions on this that we can do on strings, which are extracting substrings, just like getting a sub out of a string, and just like in arrays, we can index. We can you can specify the positions in strings that you want to take the substring of. So, for example, this single line string, right? If we want to take the first um, if we want to take the first word here, which is this, and in Python, index we have this the concept of zero indexing, right? So this first character is at the zero index, this character is at the first index, this is at the second index, and this is at the third index, right? So when slicing in Python, we have it takes a start and then an end. But then the end is not inclusive, right? But the start is inclusive. which means that to get this out of this, the start is 0, and then the end 0, 1, 2, 3. But then if you want to get this, you have to like put, if you do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So for example, print simple line 0 and 4. So 4 is not going to be inclusive. The character at the fourth index isn't going to be inclusive. So what this will return is 0 to 3, right? And which is this. So let's see what this gives us. Oh, sorry, I mo- typed this multiple times. Yeah, correct. And then if you do 0 to 3, you realize that this first three is what will be returned. And in cases where you want to get the index from the beginning, you don't always need to specify 0. You can specify it this way, right? And you can exclude the start, and it gives you it basically assumes that the start is the first 0, and the end is 4, which is not inclusive. So this is equivalent to doing this. That is equivalent to doing this. Okay, and then next up, we also on at the same way we can also exclude the end and include a start, right? Which would like start from here and then give you all everything till the end, because there is no end specified, right? So if you run this, it gives you this. And just bonus points, if you don't specify anything, it would copy the string into, it will give you the same string, right? It will give you the string from start to the end. Next up, we have a function called count, which counts the number of occurrences in a substring, right? So if I have my string as, this is an introduction to Python, introduction to Python, right? We can count number of occurrences of the substring in that string, right? So how many times do we have introduction in in the string? It's just one, and if we do this, we have it this way, right? So it gives us the count of how many substrings we have in the string. um yeah, and a couple of others that are easy to understand, like find just gives you the first occurrence of this of a substring of the first occurrence of a substring in the string, right? So it's in this case, if we do my string dot find introduction, it will give you the first occurrence of the index, the first occurrence, and it will give you the index of the first letter, right? So in this case, it will give you 0. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it should give us 11, right? And it's just used for manipulation of strings. Then we have the length function, which can be used on string, which gives you the length of a string. So if we do len my string, it gives us the length of the string, which is 33. There are 33 characters in the string. Then um, we have lower, which does to lowercase, which takes the string to lowercase. And then we have replace, where you can specify what you want to replace, what you want to replace it with, and how many occurrences you want to replace in that string, right? So for example, I can say if I want to replace introduction with intro, we can say my string, what my string, replace introduction intro, right? Oh, so that's not sure. Yeah, and then we can see that the output is this is an intro to Python, right? So this is a handy manipulation a handy function you can use to manipulate strings. Sorry. Then we have split, which is another popular function we use in a string, especially when you want to split a string into an array, right? And by default the separator is an empty space, so we can have something like net string to print and string dot split, and then we pass this. So what this does is that it finds the occurrence of what you pass in and then uses it to split the string into an array. So this is what this would give us. So this is an intro to Python, right? Um, we have this, and yeah, so I think that that covers most of the popular operations we do on strings, right? And we have arrays, which are up next. And arrays are basically lists that contain mixed data types. And we have um, so let's start with creating a list and initializing an empty list. And let me start with this for example. So yeah, this is how you create an empty list. And you can specify what you want in the list by when you define it. This one, two, three, four. This is specifying. This is like initializing an array, which is an initializing a list to a predetermined list size. And we have some functions you can perform on an array, which things like getting the length of the array. So in this case, the length of my array is going to be 4. And then so some other functions that we have in the list is append, and we have pop, which removes from the list, and then we have insert as well, right? So if you want to append to an array, we can do my dot append 5, and then you print my array. So you'd see that we have 5 items in the array, right? And then we can pop, which is my pop. What pop does is that it removes the last item in the array, right? So it will just remove, in this case, it would remove 5, since at this point in time, once we append this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in our array. And um, next is, yeah, if we pop this, I can print the array to give you the final output, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So at this point, we initialize the list to contain 4 integers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We printed the length of the array, and then okay, I didn't print this. Yeah, which is 4. Then we did an append operation to the array to append 5 to it, and then we have a list with 5 items, and then printing the array gives us this. Then doing a pop operation removes the last item in the list, which removes 5, and then the final output is this, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. How many minutes do we have left? Okay, we are at the 30 minutes mark already.
Yeah, just keep going. Let's see how far we can go.
We
Since
can
we're
go.
recording,
Oh,
people
okay.
can catch up
Oh,
afterwards.
okay. Great. Um, right. So creating that's like a high level overview of how an array works. I want to move to the next section, which is conditionals, right? Which are if else statements, right? And like we discussed earlier, we have we use in those if are conditional statements, right? We can give an expression, and then you can have an if expression which just does one thing, an if else expression which says if this, then do this, else do something else. And then we have else if, right, where you can have several if conditions and an else condition. So you can say if this, you want to do something, and else if another condition, you do something else for the second condition, and have a final else, right? So doing a quick one for if conditions, we can say, so let's say name is equal to dj, right? I can do say if name is equal to dj, right? So this is the equality operator, and what this does is that it checks the content of this variable and see if it's equal to what we have on the right hand side, right? And then we do something, right? So we can say print and we can have the else do something, right? So here, this is a simple if else um, statement where we have like something to do when, like, in if this is true, else we do this, right? So if I run this, you'd see that it would print my name is DJ, because like the name is equal to DJ, right? So if I do something here and I change the value of this variable to, for example, DJ, and I run this, you would see that this condition is going to return false, and like if false won't run this block, it will go to the else statement. Right, and then running this, you see it gives us do something, right? And now for the this covers if and if else, so we can have else if, right? And we don't have like a cap to the number of else if statements that you can put, right? And it's written this way in Python, elif. So you can add another condition. Um, let's say it's Ibrahim, right? We can still have yet another one, right? So we can say name is equal to, for example, name, we can say my other name is other name. Right. So like, let me do this right now. So this says if name is DG, if name is DG, it will print this statement. Or else, if the name is Ibrahim, you print this, and else if the name is David, you print this, right? So we can see that if I change this name to Ibrahim, this line is going to get printed out to the console. And running this, we have this, right? So it went to this else if block, and it goes from top down, right? It tries to evaluate this condition. If it's true, it goes to the block. Else it tries to evaluate this condition. Else it tries to evaluate this condition. Then we have a final else where if it doesn't match anything, it would get to this block, right? Um, Next up is loops, and loops are just used to perform iterations, right? Or like while, or we have while statements where it keeps executing a statement while a condition remains true. And then what you need to note there is the for, which which you can give a range. So let's do an example this way. So if we want to look through the first 100 numbers or first 50 numbers, for example, we can say for I is just like the index we are in range 0, 50, and then we can say print I. So range takes in a start, a stop, and a step. So range takes in a start, stop, and a step. By default, step is 1, What this means is that where it's starting from. So in this case, starting from zero, what it should end at 50, and stop, just like we did, just like I mentioned earlier in the string operations. It's exclusive. It's not inclusive of the stop, so it's going to loop from zero just up to 50, which, and the number before 50 is 49. And the step means like in how many like in what step should they increment the numbers in, right? So in this case, by default, if you don't pass anything, the step is one, but you can pass something else, and you can pass a custom step. So this is going to print numbers from 0 to 49. Yeah, we can see it prints number 0 to 49. Then if we have a step of 2, for example, you'd see it to basically print 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 up to 48. Right. Yeah, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 till 48. And now step can be anything. It's just the range function gives you a customizable way of producing a sequence of integers. Right. Next up is the while loop. Right. Let's go to the while loop. So for the while loop, the usage of while loop is something like this. While condition. Right. Condition can be anything that resolves to something, to a boolean, right? So it could be true or false. So it will keep running this operation while the condition remains valid, which is true. So once the condition becomes false, it will break out of the while loop statement. So an example is, so we can say while x is less than 50, so we can say x is equal to 0 initially, right? And then we can say while x is less than 20, we can just give it a simple command like print x, right? But if you write something like this, x is 0 and x will always be less than 20, right? So what this would result in is an infinite loop where the program doesn't terminate. Um, so in situations like this, you probably want to avoid having a condition that would make it loop infinitely. So to avoid a case like that here, we can do something like, we can just say x is equal to x plus 1. And if you recall, there's a shorter way of doing this, which is x plus equal to 1. And what this does is that it keeps printing the variables from 0 till 19, and then at the point is when it prints 19, x will be equal to 20, and it comes here to validate this condition once again, and 20 isn't less than 20, so it will terminate. Let's run this. Right, you can see that it ran completely, and it's printed 19 um, as the last thing. If we do less than or equal to 20, we're going to print up to 20 as well, right? And that's it for while loops. Um, so what we have is we have continue, which skips the rest of the loop in the current iteration and begins at the next iteration. So to give an example of using a continuous statement, let's say I just want to print all odd numbers, and I want to skip the even numbers, right? So a nice way of doing this would be doing something like if x equal to, let's continue, right? Is equal to 0. Yeah. What this does is like the modulo operation I explained earlier. It checks if x modulo 2. So if when you do it, the modulo operation is basically like, look at I try to look at it as like a remainder operation. So if it's 5 and you divide 5 by 2, right, you have a remainder of 1, right? And if 1 is equal to 0, 1 equal to 0 is false, so this it won't continue, it will go ahead and print it, right? So what this does is just like it's just like an easy way to check if something is even, right? Because 4, for example, 4 divided by 2, the remainder will always be 0. 6 divided by 2, the remainder will always be 0. And if we run this, we would end up printing just even numbers only, odd numbers only, sorry. Oh yeah, 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 this is going to loop this, sorry. um Yeah, I made a slight mistake here. This checks this condition and it would always continue, which is not incrementing this number. So we should increment this number ideally. So let's say if x modulo 2 is, so if it's an even number, let's move to the next number, right? And yeah, it should give us what we want. Yeah, so in this case, we end up printing just the odd numbers between 1 and 20. Yes, sir. So we have the break statement, which says just break. And break statement breaks out of the while loop, out of the while loop function. So for an example here is, let's say we want to stop the while loop once we get to 5, right? And we say if x is equal to 5, just break. Hence the while loop at that point. And so just end up printing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when it's equal to 5, we break out of the loop. Right. So this isn't usually it's not commonly used, but you can have an else statement after a while loop, right? Which executed once the while loop terminates, right? But if it doesn't, like if you terminate via a break statement, it would go to the else statement. Um, like a quick can do something about else. Oh, sorry, I deleted this, which I should as well. Right. So the yeah. So but else clauses are not executed when a loop terminates via a break statement, right? So I had a break statement which terminates that loop. That's why it didn't execute. But if I didn't have a break statement, let's see. Yep. So it finished the loop and goes to the else statement just when it finishes that loop. Um, yeah, what we have next is functions, right? So functions in Python are defined with
So,
the
Deji, yeah, I think let's pause on functions and then
okay
take that in another session so that we have time.
time. Okay, great.
Because yeah, functions and classes are something that we need to get into properly so that you
Okay,
understand what's going on in the more advanced sessions. Yeah. So, interestingly, just the very foundations took longer than we expected, but um, yeah, here we are. Let's see. Oops. Okay. Are we all back? Okay, Deji is who we can't see. I was a bit confused.
oh yeah,
All right.
so
Right. Yes. So thank you so much, Deji, for this session. The time just flew by really quickly. We were busy adding notes, so I guess
okay,
that explains the lack of questions. But there were lots of notes, so if you watch a replay, you'll be wondering what was going on with all the notes that were busy popping up on the screen. But Yeah, we tend to do that. That's why we have John. He likes muting his mic and typing away. Only today, I don't know, John. Your comments were showing up under my name. I don't know why.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that. I don't know.
That's weird. Um,
But I signed in as
okay.
myself though.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll figure that out. All right. So, thank you so much, Deji. No questions, and we've kept the audience seated for 45 minutes. So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And in the next session, we will beg Deji to come back and take functions, classes, and operators. So,
Okay.
until then,
All right.
bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye.